My husband left me for my sister after our wedding, but 10 years later, she's begging me to take him back. I still remember the way the sun felt on my face that morning, a promise of warmth and happiness. My wedding day was supposed to be the beginning of my happily ever after. I'd been with David for 5 years, and we'd planned every detail of our future together. The flowers, the cake, the vows we wrote ourselves. All of it was perfect, or so I thought. Standing at the altar, looking into David's eyes, I felt nothing but love and certainty. We exchanged our vows with tears in our eyes, and our family and friends cheered as we kissed for the first time as husband and wife. It was a beautiful moment, a snapshot of pure joy. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. My younger sister, Emily, was my maid of honour. She was radiant that day, her laughter infectious, her support unwavering. I felt so lucky to have her by my side. But that night, everything changed. We had planned to leave for our honeymoon the next day, but David seemed anxious to leave the reception early. He said he felt overwhelmed, and I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, weddings are stressful, right? He kissed me on the forehead, told me he loved me, and promised he'd be back soon. Hours passed, and David didn't return. I called and texted, but there was no response. Panic set in, and I started calling everyone, including Emily. She didn't answer either, and that's when I began to suspect something was terribly wrong. It was nearly dawn when Emily finally called me back. Her voice was shaky, and she told me to come over to her apartment immediately. My heart sank as I drove through the empty streets, a sense of dread settling over me like a heavy fog. When I arrived, I found David there, looking as guilty as a child caught stealing cookies. Emily stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. My mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Then David spoke, his voice a strained whisper. "I'm so sorry, but I can't do this. I can't be with you anymore. I'm in love with Emily." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the room spin, and I had to sit down to keep from collapsing. My sister? The woman who had helped me plan every detail of my wedding? It didn't make any sense. Emily tried to explain, saying it had been a mistake, a moment of weakness. But all I could see was betrayal. My husband, my sister, how could they do this to me? I screamed, I cried, I begged them to tell me it wasn't true, but their silence was confirmation enough. In that moment, my life shattered into pieces. The man I loved, the future I had envisioned, the trust I had in my sister, it all crumbled. I felt utterly alone, betrayed by the two people I thought I could trust the most. I left Emily's apartment that morning, numb and broken. The next few weeks were a haze of grief and disbelief. My family was divided. Some sided with Emily, saying she made a mistake but still deserved forgiveness. Others stood by me, outraged by their betrayal. David and Emily tried to justify their actions, claiming they hadn't planned to hurt me. They begged for my understanding, but how could I understand something so senseless? The pain was too deep, the wound too fresh. I decided to leave town, unable to bear the pitying looks and whispered gossip. I needed a fresh start, away from the memories of that horrible night. With a heavy heart, I packed my bags and moved to a new city, hoping to rebuild my life from the ruins they had left behind. As I settled into my new life, I buried the pain deep inside, determined to move on. I focused on my career, making new friends, and creating a life where I was in control. But the scars of betrayal were always there, lurking beneath the surface, a reminder of the happiness that was stolen from me. Moving to a new city was both terrifying and exhilarating. I chose a place where nobody knew my story, where I could be just another face in the crowd. My new apartment was small but cozy, with a view of the bustling streets below. It was a far cry from the suburban home David and I had planned to buy, but it was mine, and that gave me a sense of control I desperately needed. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office. My career in marketing flourished, and I quickly rose through the ranks. My colleagues respected my dedication, and my boss saw potential in me that I had never realized before. It was empowering to be recognized for my talents, to build something that was entirely my own. Making friends in a new city wasn't easy, but slowly I began to form connections. There was Laura, a vivacious graphic designer who loved to drag me to art shows and concerts, and Mike, a quiet but witty software developer who shared my love of obscure movies. They became my support system, the family I chose for myself. Despite my new life, the scars from David and Emily's betrayal were slow to heal. I dated occasionally, but I struggled to trust. Every time a relationship started to get serious, I found myself pulling away, terrified of being hurt again. It was easier to keep my distance, to protect myself from the possibility of more pain. Then I met Ethan. Ethan was different. He was patient, kind, and incredibly understanding. We met at a friend's dinner party, and I was immediately drawn to his easygoing nature and warm smile. He worked as a chef, and our conversations were filled with stories of culinary adventures and mutual love for good food. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. Ethan never pushed me to share more than I was comfortable with, but he was always there, ready to listen when I was ready to talk. Slowly, I began to open up about my past, about the betrayal that had shattered my life. Ethan listened without judgment, his eyes full of empathy. "You've been through so much," he said softly, holding my hand. "But you're so strong. You've built a whole new life for yourself, and that's incredible." His words were a balm to my wounded heart. With Ethan, I felt safe, cherished, and valued for who I was. Our relationship grew, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of love again. One evening, as we sat on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below, Ethan turned to me with a serious expression. "I love you," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "I want a future with you, but I need to know if you're ready to let go of the past, to move forward with me." His words hit me hard. I realized that while I had built a new life, I had never truly let go of the pain. It was time to confront the past, to face the demons that still haunted me. A few weeks later, I received a call that forced me to confront my past sooner than I had planned. It was Emily. Her voice was strained and desperate. "I need to talk to you," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It's about David. Please, can we meet?" My heart raced at the mention of his name. I hadn't spoken to either of them in years, and I wasn't sure I wanted to, but something in Emily's voice gave me pause. She sounded genuinely distressed, and despite everything, she was still my sister. We agreed to meet at a small cafe near my apartment. As I walked in, I saw her sitting at a corner table, her once vibrant face now etched with worry. She looked up as I approached, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat down, bracing myself for whatever she had to say. "What's going on, Emily?" She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "David, he's been cheating on me. I found out a few months ago, and it's been tearing me apart. I didn't know who else to turn to." I felt a mix of emotions, anger, pity, and a strange sense of vindication. But most of all, I felt a pang of sadness for the sister I had once loved so dearly. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I need your help," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I know I don't deserve it after what I did to you, but I'm desperate. I don't know what to do." I sat back, absorbing her words. The past had come crashing into my present, demanding to be faced. And as I looked into my sister's tear-streaked face, I realized that this was my chance to finally find closure, to let go of the pain and move forward, for both of us. Sitting across from Emily in that small cafe, I felt a torrent of emotions, anger, pity, confusion. Her revelation about David's infidelity brought back all the pain I had worked so hard to bury. But there was something different this time. I wasn't the broken woman I had been years ago. I had built a new life, and now I had the strength to face the past head on. "What do you expect me to do, Emily?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She wiped her eyes, looking more fragile than I had ever seen her. "I don't know," she admitted. I need someone who understands. I need my sister." Her words hung in the air, a poignant reminder of the bond we once shared. Despite everything, a part of me still cared for her. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll help you, but we need to set some boundaries. This doesn't erase what you did." Emily nodded, her face a mixture of relief and guilt. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm so grateful." Over the next few days, I learned more about the turmoil in Emily's life. David's betrayal had shattered her in ways similar to how their actions had shattered me. He had been seeing another woman for months, and Emily had discovered the affair through a series of suspicious texts and late-night absences. The irony was almost too much to bear. David, who had left me for Emily, had now betrayed her too. Emily moved in with me temporarily, her presence a constant reminder of the past. It was awkward and tense at first, but slowly we began to find some semblance of our old relationship. She was remorseful, constantly apologizing, and while I couldn't forget, I started to understand the depth of her regret. One evening, as we sat on my couch watching a movie, Emily turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Do you think there's any chance for me and David to fix this? Can he change?" I sighed, thinking about Ethan and the trust we had built. People can change, but it takes a lot of work. And it's not just about him changing. You have to decide if you can forgive and move forward. Emily nodded, absorbing my words. "I just don't know if I have the strength." "You do," I said firmly. "You survived this far. You're stronger than you think." A week later, I received another unexpected call, this time from David. He wanted to meet and discuss the situation. My initial reaction was to refuse, but something inside me pushed to face him. It was time to confront the past fully and get the closure I needed. We agreed to meet at a park, a neutral place where emotions could be kept in check. Seeing David again was jarring. He looked older, more worn out, as if the years had not been kind to him. For a moment I wondered if he had any idea of the pain he had caused. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, his voice cautious. I nodded, keeping my emotions in check. "What do you want, David?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry for everything. Leaving you, hurting Emily. I've made so many mistakes." I looked at him, searching for sincerity. "Why now, David? Why after all these years?" "Because I've realized how much I've messed up," he said, his eyes filled with regret. "I lost two incredible women because I was selfish and stupid. I want to make things right." His words stirred something inside me, but not in the way he might have hoped. I felt a sense of closure, a release of the anger and hurt that had been festering for years. "You can't just apologize and expect everything to be okay," I said softly. "You hurt us both deeply. We've had to rebuild our lives from the ground up." "I know," he said, tears brimming in his eyes, "and I'm truly sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I regret everything." For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. David's remorse didn't change the past, but it gave me the closure I needed to truly move forward. "I appreciate your apology," I said, standing up, "but it's time for me to let go of the past. I hope you find your own way to make amends and be better." As I walked away, I felt a sense of peace. The past no longer had a hold on me. I had faced the people who had hurt me and emerged stronger. Returning home, I found Emily in the kitchen, nervously sipping tea. "How did it go?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. "It went as well as it could," I replied. "He apologized. It doesn't change what happened, but it's a start." Emily nodded, relief washing over her face. "I'm glad. Thank you for giving him a chance." "We all needed it," I said. "Now it's up to you to decide what you want to do next." Emily spent the next few days in deep contemplation, and I saw a change in her, a determination to take control of her life. She decided to move back to our hometown temporarily, to stay with our parents and figure out her next steps. We parted on better terms than I could have ever imagined, the rift between us beginning to heal. With Emily gone, I focused on my life with Ethan. I told him about everything, and he listened with the same patience and understanding that had drawn me to him in the first place. "I'm proud of you," he said, holding me close. "You've faced so much, and you're still standing. That's incredible." His words filled me with warmth. For the first time in a long while, I felt ready to fully embrace the future, to let love in without the shadows of the past looming over me. Emily and David were part of my history, but they no longer defined me. I was free. Emily's departure marked a new chapter for both of us. She needed to find herself again, and I needed to solidify the new life I had painstakingly built. Her time in our hometown was an opportunity for her to reconcile with our parents and rediscover who she was outside of her relationship with David. Meanwhile, I dove deeper into my relationship with Ethan. With each passing day, I felt more secure, more certain that we had a future together. His unwavering support and love gave me the courage to face the lingering shadows of my past and to finally let go of the pain. A few months later, I received a call from Emily. She sounded happier, more grounded. "I wanted to let you know that I've decided to stay in our hometown for a while," she said. "I've started therapy and it's helping a lot. I'm also taking some classes to finish my degree." I was genuinely happy for her. "That's great news, Emily. I'm proud of you. And," she added, her voice softer, "I've decided to file for divorce from David. It's time for me to move on." Her decision was a relief, a sign that she was taking control of her life. "I think that's the right choice," I said. "You deserve to be happy, and you deserve a fresh start." Emily and I continued to mend our relationship, one conversation at a time. She visited me a few times, and each visit was a step toward healing the rift between us. We were rebuilding our bond on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect, and it felt good. As for David, I heard through the grapevine that he was struggling. His infidelity and subsequent divorce had isolated him, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions alone. I felt a twinge of pity, but mostly a sense of closure. He was no longer my concern. I had moved on. Ethan and I continued to grow closer. We took weekend trips, explored new restaurants, and spent lazy Sundays cooking together in my apartment. One evening, as we sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, he took my hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his eyes serious but tender. "I want to build a future with you for real. I know we've talked about it before, but I want to take the next step." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Ethan smiled, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as I looked at the man who had brought so much love and stability into my life. "Yes," I whispered, barely able to speak through the lump in my throat. "Yes, I will." We celebrated our engagement with our closest friends, including Laura and Mike, who had been there for me from the beginning. It was a joyous occasion, filled with laughter and love, a stark contrast to my first disastrous wedding. As we planned our wedding, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. But this time, I knew I was entering into a partnership built on trust, respect, and genuine love. Ethan was my rock, and I was his. We were a team. The day of our wedding was perfect in its simplicity. We opted for a small ceremony in a beautiful garden, surrounded by our closest friends and family. Emily was there, standing by my side as my maid of honor. Her support meant the world to me, a testament to how far we had come. As I walked down the aisle toward Ethan, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined me. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the future with an open heart. After the ceremony, as Ethan and I shared our first dance as husband and wife, I looked around at the faces of the people who had supported and loved me through the darkest times. I felt an immense gratitude for the journey that had led me here, to this moment of pure happiness. In the weeks that followed, Emily continued to thrive in our hometown. She found a new job, made new friends, and even started dating again. We spoke regularly, and each conversation was a reminder of how far we had both come. One evening, as I sat on the balcony with Ethan, watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. "You know," I said, leaning against him, "I never thought I'd be this happy again." Ethan kissed my forehead, his arms wrapped around me. "You deserve every bit of happiness and more. We've both been through a lot, but we've come out stronger." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of contentment. I'm grateful for everything, the good and the bad. It's all part of who I am now. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a profound sense of closure. The past no longer held any power over me. I had faced my demons, mended my relationships, and found a love that was real and enduring. To all of you reading this, Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we have the power to rise above our circumstances and create our own happiness. How have you navigated the challenges in your life, and what has helped you find peace and closure?